Hey, before we get started on today's lesson, I have 3 questions for you. Number 1, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live and why? Number 2, if you could be anything, have any job or any career, what would you be and why? And the last question, if you could change one thing about your life, what would it be? If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be? Interesting questions, right? Think about them. You can leave your answers down below. Now, these 3 questions are examples of the second conditional. Today, we're going to be learning about the second conditional, of course. Now, this is actually one of my favorite grammar points in English. It's one of my favorite grammar points to teach because you get to imagine and have a little bit of fun with it. So today, we're going to look at the second conditional, see how to make it, and how to actually use it in real life. So let's get started. So what exactly is the second conditional for, and how can you use it? You can use the second conditional to talk about imaginary, hypothetical, or impossible future situations with imaginary results, okay? So with the second conditional, there's a lot of imagining, but keep in mind that we are talking about the future, all right? So again, you use the second conditional for imaginary, hypothetical, or impossible situations in the future where you are imagining the results that could happen in those situations, okay? I'll give you some more examples. If I had $1 million, I would buy a boat. If I had $1 million, I would buy a boat. This is imaginary because I do not have $1 million and I cannot buy a boat, okay? But I'm just imagining if I did have $1 million, I could buy a boat or I would buy a boat, all right? Another example, if I spoke French, I would move to Paris. If I spoke French, I would move to Paris, okay? This is imaginary because I do not speak French fluently. Now, an example of an impossible situation. If I had superpowers, I could fly, okay? If I had superpowers, I could fly. This is a completely impossible situation. Another example of an impossible situation is if I were you, okay? If I were you, I would study English every single day. If I were you, I would study English every single day. Now, this example is not crazy, but it's impossible because I am not you, okay? I am not you. So again, we use the second conditional to talk about imaginary, hypothetical, or impossible future situations. Now, how do you make or form the second conditional? So the second conditional is made of 2 parts. You have your condition and your result. Your condition and your result. So let's use this example. If I had more free time, I would join a dance class. If I had more free time, I would join a dance class. So our first part is if I had more free time. This is the condition, okay? To form the condition, we use if and the past simple tense. So if I had, past simple, more free time, okay? That's our condition. Now to form the result, we use would or could and a base verb. I would join or I could join a dance class, okay? That is how you form the second conditional. Now, there are 2 things to keep in mind with the second conditional. First of all, you can change the order of the condition and the result. For example, if I had more free time, I would join a dance class is the same as I would join a dance class if I had more free time, okay? So it doesn't matter if you say the condition first or the result first, the meaning is exactly the same, okay? That's the first thing to remember with all conditionals. And the second thing to keep in mind or to think about is the difference between would and could, okay? So let's look at these 2 examples. If I had $1 million, I would buy a boat, or if I had $1 million, I could buy a boat. There is a difference in the meaning here. So if I had $1 million, I would buy a boat. It means that that is my intention or my actual plan, okay? This is what I personally would do. If I had $1 million, I could buy a boat. We use could to talk about possibilities. So there are other possibilities. If I had $1 million, I could buy a boat. I could maybe buy a plane. I don't know the price of a plane. I could travel. I could invest. I could open a company, but I would choose to buy a boat. Okay, so just keep that in mind, the difference between would and could with the second conditional. Now let's take a look at some more examples and do a little bit more practice so you know exactly how to use the second conditional in your own conversations. So our first example is, if I lived in Italy, I would speak Italian. This is a hypothetical, imaginary example because I don't live in Italy. But if I did, then I would speak Italian. If we sold the car, we would have more money. You would save money if you cooked your meals instead of eating out. So in this example, imagine that you buy your lunch or you buy your breakfast almost every day and you're spending a lot of money. If you cooked at home more, you would save more money and you would spend less on eating out. If I were you, I would accept the job. This is a nice one to know. This is very common when you are giving advice to someone. If I were you, I would. You could also say, if I were you, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't accept the job. He would tell you if he didn't like the gift. If I had enough money, I would travel the world. So think about this one. What would you do if you had enough money or a lot of money? He would pass the class if he studied. In this case, he has not been studying. He doesn't really study. But if he did, if he made more of an effort, in that case, he would pass the class. She would help you if she could. Now, in this example, she's not able to help you, but we're just imagining that she has the ability or the possibility to help you. In that case, she would. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I would not do that if I were you. And if you explained the situation to him, he would understand. Okay, so pause here if you want to reread any of these examples. All of these are very common, very natural. So try to come up with your own. Pause here if you want to have a closer look at these. Okay, now we're going to look at some questions that you can answer. First question: if you got a job offer in another country, would you move? If you got a job offer in another country other than your home country, would you accept it? Would you move? Second question: if you could spend a day with anyone in the world, who would you spend it with? If you could spend a day with anyone in the entire world, who would you spend it with? If money were no object, where would you live? If money were no object, where would you live? Now, no object means that there's no limit to the amount of money you had. You basically have unlimited money in this question, okay? So if you had unlimited amounts of money, where would you live? What kind of house would you live in? What country? What city? So you can write your answers to these questions for practice down below in the comments. And again, pause here if you need a minute to think about your answers to these questions, all right? And once you're writing your answers, make sure you use the full form of the second conditional so that you can practice it. So that is the second conditional. Make sure to check out my other lessons on the other conditionals in English. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments for us. And thank you so much for watching and for learning with me. And I'll see you very soon in the next lesson.